Hello, welcome back to the show. I have a really juicy topic for this week's episode, and I'm going to dive into my relationship with desire and how that has led me to make all of my life and business dreams come true, which I think is actually the most important topic in the whole wide world because our desire is always leading us to what is meant for us, what is best for us, and most importantly, what is the most fun for us. So I'm going to share a few pivotal moments in my transformational journey and relationship with my own desire in the hopes and intention that this will ignite your connection to your desire. And so pay attention to your intuition, see what comes up for you around this conversation, pay attention to your body, which is where our desire lives. And I would love to hear your input and insights on this topic. So when I was studying my master's in Montreal, and that was a very pivotal turning point for me in my relationship with my desire. And I'll tell you why. I studied my master's purely on an intuitive whim because my desire was to stay in Canada for longer. And I knew that it was required of me to have another visa. And my visa that I was previously on, my working visa, was expiring. So it was just an idea that popped into my head. It wasn't because I wanted to do a master's. Anyway, it was very synchronistic, and I was offered a fully funded place at Concordia University in Montreal to study film studies, which is, I was working in film at the time, a subject I'm really passionate about, was really excited to dive into, had no real goals for this master's other than to just enjoy myself and stay in Canada, which is what it gave me. But it gave me so many other things as well, one of which was just an incredible amount of time freedom. So I had been set up, obviously, to take courses during the winter, and I'd never really experienced this in my educational history before, where I had absolute free reign to pick and focus and study whatever I was the most excited by. And this question just kind of blew my mind because I'd never actually been asked that before. What do you want to focus your time and energy on? You can literally pick anything you want. And that was a really profound breakthrough moment for me, because I actually started to ask myself that question where maybe I hadn't given it that much space before, which was what do I actually want? And really putting some time and thought into answering that question. And most importantly, I had the space to really listen to the answers that were coming from inside of me, because they weren't going to come from anywhere else. I couldn't ask anybody else, what am I most interested in studying and doing research on right now? Nobody else was going to be able to answer that for me. So I started asking, what do I want, more consistently? And I started listening more deeply. And so first, obviously, this conversation took place within the research that I was doing in my master's program, which was starting with, apparently what I wanted was experimental cinema and feminist philosophy. And that's really what I ended up diving into in that program. But then that question started to unravel into all other areas of my life. And there was a really pivotal text that came in at this moment, which was The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. So whenever I hear about somebody picking up this book, I'm like, oh, this is exciting. Your world is about to blow wide open in your connection to your desires and your capacity and skill to actually take action on that and to start to live out and experience more of what you desire in life. So in that book, she shares a scripting technique where you write stream of consciousness for 3 pages every day. She calls it the morning pages. And I actually heard her speak about this technique in an interview more recently, where she describes it as a cure for codependency. And I thought this was absolutely mind-blowing, because basically what you're doing when you're giving yourself that time and that focus to really connect internally, not only to connect internally, but also to create objectivity around it, because we have these desires all day long, but more often than not, we're ignoring them, or more often than not, we're distracted by something that is in our physical world. So it really does take that diligence and practice to start to listen to that small, tiny inner voice, those little whispers. And what happens when you're doing this scripting is you're saying, I'm here, I'm listening, I'm focusing, and I'm actually pulling out what it is that my inner voice is telling me. And initially you start off by just kind of purging and spewing all of the crap and like nonsense that's rattling around in your brain. But by committing to doing 3 pages of it, you start to clear out the noise and dig a little bit deeper. And then you'll notice by doing this consistently, and this is really key, is to connect consistently, is that repetitive ideas start to come up. And so when something is repetitively coming up, then that's when it becomes kind of impossible to not really pay attention to that. So I love this technique. And the way that she describes it as a cure for codependency is because we're really, through that process, calling back our energy into our body. We're reconnecting to our energy versus the energies of other people. And it's also really a cure for unsupportive boundaries, because it's a chance to get really clear on what we want and need, to the point that we can communicate that and take a stand for it. And it's an instant clarity creator when you practice it regularly, and it builds connection to your intuition. And that was really, the beginning of when I seriously started committing to listening to my intuition, paying attention, and not only that, but translating that into an action plan. Because desire lives in the body. That's how we access this insight and information. And so that really turned into a time for me of just loving my life, loving who I am, and feeling so in alignment and in love with life at whole new levels. So of course, that was the moment that I attracted the love of my life. He literally showed up on my doorstep, rang my doorbell, and moved in with me after answering my ad for a roommate on Craigslist. So I have a lot of tangible proof and many, many big examples like this, that when we connect to our true desires and we give ourselves permission to say yes to them, and we don't negotiate on them, we end up getting what we want with surprising levels of ease and magic. And I've really found that to be true throughout the rest of my life and business, in raising my prices, in shifting what I'm offering, in shifting who I'm working with and what I'm helping them with, in shifting my marketing strategy, in any level of decision making. When I just do what I desire, it works. So another amazing turning point that just unfolded for me, to really underscore this fact, is that I found a vision board from 2015 behind the bookshelf at my mum's, which is where I am in England at the time of recording this. And it was the same day that my green card arrived. Like, I got my passport in the mail with my visa in it, which was a 7-year goal. I'd been wanting this for 7 years. And I started to look at all of the things I'd put on my vision board. I had my Canadian permanent residency. I had homes with beautiful gardens in New York, which, is kind of a hard thing to come by, but I wanted it before I moved to New York. And I've, since lived in 2 homes with almost the exact same backyard that was pictured on that vision board, with a beautiful bay window and a beautiful green garden behind it. And so when I reflect on my goals, it's the things that I truly, in my body, deeply desire. Those are the ones that always materialize. The external metrics that I have defined my goals by, like audience size or random money goals, that really don't happen for me until I have connected them to body level desires for what that goal will actually mean for me. So I want to share another really key transitional moment that stands out for me in really understanding this process, which was when I was living in Beacon in upstate New York, kind of by accident, for a few months during a gap in my Canadian visa. And I happened to move into an Airbnb run by an amazing shaman called Eileen O'Hare. And she happened to run weekly women's circles, which she'd been running for years in the community with all of these other really badass wise women who were almost twice my age. And that was just such an amazing time. And I learned so much from them. And this is where I started to consistently practice speaking my desires out loud with others, through sitting in circles with these women week after week. And I remember the visceral experience of one of the times when I spoke my desires to, be expressing myself more creatively, to be making a lot of money, and to be really successful and reaching a lot more people in my business. And in that moment of speaking those desires out of my mouth, I could feel feelings of shame rising up in my body, like very uncomfortable, very visceral feelings of just feeling ashamed of myself and ashamed of my desires. And now I knew this was a safe space, and that these women were so loving and accepting and non-judgmental, fully accepted me for who I was in every moment, because that was the intentional practice in that specific space. And now I understand, in hindsight, what this process has been for me, and I see it for so many women now that I recognize it, is really just understanding that as women, we are so conditioned to reject and deny ourselves and to literally feel ashamed for who we are because of the patriarchal heritage that we were born into. When women historically had no value beyond their benefit to men. We were historically seen and treated as possessions, where their desires were not only unimportant, but irrelevant. And we have been childbearers and rearers and, a lot of roles in society we have been granted permission to be accepted in. But there has not been space for our desires outside of that, let alone creative desires. And God forbid, we have financial desires, right? So obviously times have changed and are changing. And we know this to some level, but I just feel it's always so valuable to just connect to our body and how it is evolving and what we're carrying in our body and what we are shifting in our bodies as we go through this process of creating the things that we desire that maybe no other woman in our lineage has ever created before us. So these programs run deep in our emotional and mental conditioning. And as I have seen for myself in this process of shifting through it to be able to create what I want in my life, it's been a reoccurring theme. So when I acknowledge my desires and when I safely start to speak my desires, which, began in speaking to trusted people who I know will not create even more trauma by questioning and rejecting me. And in doing so, through that emotional purge of shame that I have held in my body until I create that connection and confidence around my desires, which then makes it easier to take them public and take a stand for them and to ask for them and to invite others into them, which is the process that makes them real. So now everything I do is a decision-making process led very consciously by desire. And it's how I healed my 5 years of chronic fatigue by surrendering to my desire for rest, for support, and for lifestyle changes. It's how I built a business that I desire and love every single part of it inside and out. It's how I've ended up traveling through 16 different countries in the past 7 years because that was my desire. And it's how I live my day to day. I play music when I want to. I dance when I want to. I move my body in ways that feel good every damn day. I eat what I want to. I sleep when I want to. I ask for the opportunities that I crave. I give when I want to. I say no when I want to. I create what I desire. I do what I desire. I speak what I desire. I stand for what I desire. And it gets better and better and better and better. So I hope that this episode ignites you and inspires you to do something you deeply desire today and to continue living like that every single day and just get so excited about where that is going to lead you. And if living a desire-led life and business is calling you and you are looking for a mentor to expand your capacity to create exactly what you want in your dream six-figure business, you can work with me in my mastermind, Freedom Club, or as a private one-on-one client. So you can check out all of the different ways to work with me at withsarahmac.com. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I'm wishing you a year of all of your wildest desires come true.
For more inspirational content, head over to my website withsarahmac.com and please support the show by liking, commenting, and subscribing.